Hey, this is Mark Bird from Hammock, and you're listening to The New Scene.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The New Scene. I am your host, Keith, and we're back with another brand new episode. And on the show this week, we have Jeremy Galindo of This Will Destroy You and You Infinite. This Will Destroy You have been a staple in the post-rock scene for decades now, and they've been one of my favorite bands since I discovered them way back in 2009, I think it was. And we talk with Jeremy all about the making of This Will Destroy You's classic self-titled LP, some of their other releases. We also talk about the semi-recent creative split within This Will Destroy You and the dual lineups they have running now. Jeremy gives us the rundown on that, which is good because I've been wondering what's going on there for years now. Jeremy also has a new band with former and founding member of This Will Destroy You, Raymond Brown. It's called You Infinite. Jeremy and Raymond have not collaborated together since This Will Destroy You's debut self-titled record. So it's very exciting to have them teamed up together once again to bring us the self-titled debut from You Infinite, which is excellent, by the way. It's a great conversation, and that's coming up shortly. But first, here's how you can support The New Scene. Rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have a main channel with full video episodes and a clips channel with clips from select episodes. We have shirts for sale at our store at Death Wish Inc. Pick one up. It's a great way to support the show. And you can follow us on social media at New Scene Pod. Also, don't forget to support Iodine Recordings. There's a second pressing up of The Gray in Between from Jerome's Dream. Make sure you pick this up while it's available. It's one of my favorite records of all time, and it was my top record of 2023. New Friends Fest 2025 will be happening August 1st through 3rd in Toronto, Ontario at the Lithuanian House. And Iodine's own Drought will be on the lineup. It's a great fest, so check it out if you can. Dead Bars just premiered their video for I Wanna Be a Ghost. Check it out on the Iodine YouTube page. Iodine's own Rebuilder will be sharing the stage with Dropkick Murphys, The Bouncing Souls, and Hot Water Music on Sunday, March 16th in Boston, Massachusetts at MGM Music Hall. Drought will be playing a show supporting Cancer Bats on Friday, May 2nd at The Parkside in San Francisco, California. For more information, head to iodinerecordings.com, and you can follow the label on Instagram at Iodine Recordings. And don't forget to support our sponsor for the month of March, Evil Greed. In addition to their online store, Evil Greed offers tour merch, merch handling, and logistics services for tons of bands. They also offer merch and distribution solutions for bands and record labels in Europe and the UK. Evil Greed has a carefully selected roster of artists and labels in their online store. They offer very reasonable worldwide shipping rates, specifically to the UK and the USA. Let's take a look at what's going on. Look, we've got the official merch store for Steve Von Till. He's got a new record, Alone in a World of Wounds, up for pre-order right now. Steve was just on the show. We've got merch from Brutus, Drain, Deaf Heaven, Author and Punisher, and Sumac, who have all been on the show. And we've got a great selection of featured music. Steve Von Till, Alone in a World of Wounds LP up now for pre-order. I can't wait to hear that. Pain of Truth, we just mentioned them on the show. The new record from Deaf Heaven, Lonely People with Power. That's up for pre-order, as well as the new record from Scowl, Are We All Angels? And they've both been on the show as well. For more information, head to evilgreed.net, and you can follow the label on Instagram at evil_greed. All right, so check back in with me. In segment 3, we'll do a recap of the conversation with Jeremy. I'll do a video recap of the recent Frail reunion gig I saw in Philadelphia at the First Unitarian Church. We'll cover everything. But right now, we are going to speak to Jeremy Galindo of This Will Destroy You and You Infinite. Enjoy. All right, we are here now with Jeremy Galindo. Jeremy, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yes, Jeremy, it's great to have you here. There's exciting things happening. Well, one, you have a very rich history with This Will Destroy You, one of my all-time favorite bands. But now we have You Infinite, who will be releasing their self-titled debut in February on Pelagic Records, and I'm very excited about that. And we'll talk about all of that. But Jeremy, first I want to ask you, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Yeah. We have This Will Destroy You has a tour coming up here in the next week in Central South America. So trying to get all that wrapped up, ready to go, and excited to go down there.
Central and South America tour. That's going to be a good time, especially this time of year.
Oh yeah, it'll be nice. I'm in Oklahoma at the moment, so it is just shitty cold out here. It's terrible. So yeah, looking forward to being in some summer weather in January.
What are you doing in Oklahoma?
Yeah, not a ton of people know this, but I moved here in 2022, just after the pandemic hit. Couldn't really afford staying in Southern California, so my roommate was moving out here, and it was so ridiculously affordable. I was only planning to be here for 6 months, but I've been here better part of 2 years, and we'll be moving out probably back to Austin for a bit soon. But yeah, no, it's where I live.
Do you like it?
No. No, it is very boring. I don't know anyone here. I need to move from California where just like beauty surrounds you everywhere to coming back to the Midwest, which is something I really didn't want to do. Um, it's a bit of a shock. It's a little boring, but I am excited about going back to Austin for a year or two before I plan on moving back to California. But yeah, I was hoping not to have to come back here.
What do you do while you're there?
I mostly, if I'm not working on music, I am watching TV, a movie, maybe playing video games, something of the sort.
What are you playing these days?
Video game wise?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just got through a run through of the God of War series. I was just replaying it. Haven't been playing too much. I go through phases where I'll like game for a month and then I won't touch my PlayStation for like 6 months or so. So there hasn't been much new that has been exciting me too much. So yeah, I just went through a replay for the hell of it.
Nice. Yeah, I do the same thing these days. I used to game a lot consistently, especially during the pandemic. I started the Silent Hill 2 remake, but I haven't picked it back up in months.
Oh, I had a great time with that one. Yeah, that one was fun for me. I really enjoyed it because I hadn't played it since the OG way back in the day, and I thought they did a great job with the remake.
Yeah, I've never played. Well, I played some of Part 1, never played Part 2 or any of the other games, but the remake I like so far. But I'm just working constantly, so gotcha, I just haven't gotten back to it yet.
Yeah, I feel you.
So here's a question. Why are you going to move to Austin and then to California?
The group that I'm performing with now and Raymond, my writing partner, they all live in Austin. So I figured going there, get started on the next album for You Infinite, and also a couple projects I'd like to get off the ground. All my people are pretty much there, and I can access studios and better than my home studio, can access those things a lot easier there and have the people perform instruments that I'm not comfortable performing. They're all kind of there. So yeah, it just makes sense to be there for a bit, and I'll be closer to my family, which I haven't really been for well over the past decade. It's been in separate states, but yeah, it'd be nice to be around them for a little while before kind of taking off for good, I guess, whenever I do get back to California.
Where did you grow up?
San Antonio, Texas.
Okay. Did you like it there?
Yes and no. So San Antonio's it's a great city for certain things, but it's also just, and I think most people feel this way about the place they grew up, but it's just kind of like a black hole. Like you see people just get stuck there for life. Like, both my parents were born and raised there, never left. 50% of my friends there never left town. They get a job. There's some pretty big corporations there that it's easy to get into that mode, career mode there, and just and just stay and never leave. People always talked about leaving when they're teenagers. They just don't. And it's a great city for like families, but not great for the art scene per se.
So did you always want to pursue the arts, or did it just happen?
Yeah, for the most part. I never thought it would happen. I never thought I would be in a position where I could do this for, a living. But yeah, in my teenage years, probably starting around 12, 13 is when I started forming like my first bands and whatnot. It's also when I was 13 is when me and Raymond met and we started writing music together. So we've known each other over half our lives and been working together forever. But yeah, I had dreams that it would work out, and when I was younger, it'd be in different ways. I never thought I'd be writing instrumental music, but that's the path that ended up working out. And yeah, I'm not in management somewhere corporate, which it's nice doing this. I really enjoy what I do.
Yeah, yeah. How about some of your trajectory? Like, what are you into musically? What are some of the key moments with you discovering music over the years? Like for me, there was the alternative craze, of course, and then new metal was kicking off for a bit. I was into that, and then I discovered hardcore and ran with that. Discovering post rock in like 2005-ish, that was life changing for me. So there's been different eras over the year. How about for you?
Yeah, so when I was younger, mostly was just whatever was on the radio. I was also raised very religious, so my parents didn't allow a lot of secular music or what have you. So my break into alternative music was probably Tooth and Nail Records, because that was the only thing that was allowed to listen to was Jesus focused bullshit, whatever. Sorry, don't mean any offense to anyone who is religious. I no longer am. What really started to get me to look into music more seriously was probably when I got into Radiohead when I was younger, probably 13, 14, around that time. And yeah, and into this genre of music, that's kind of all over the place. Like I was definitely into Sigur Rós, um, back when we were writing our first two albums, and I was a huge fan of composers for film. So people like Gustavo Santaolalla, Robin Guthrie, Harold Budd definitely shaped kind of the way I thought about how to play the guitar and how to write the way I do with This Will Destroy You and with You Infinite.
That's interesting that film scoring music influenced how you play. I don't know that I've heard that before.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's still my biggest influence.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I wish I could be doing it, and I hope to be someday.
Yeah. So This Will Destroy You, that came together in around 2002. Did you know all the guys? Like I read that you kind of knew each other and some went to high school together. Is that correct?
Yeah, so me and Raymond went to school together. We were a pop punk band before we became This Will Destroy You. I kind of
Really?
Yeah. We'd been doing it locally in San Antonio for maybe 7 years, 8 years, around there, and we were somewhat popular locally.
What was the band called?
Second String. We didn't really release anything online. This was before you had streaming services. So like the closest thing would maybe be like mp3.com or MySpace or something might have had some tracks on there. But yeah, I had kind of grown out of playing that kind of music when I was 19, 20. I left the band, tried to start a more experimental project with another group of guys that I hung out with, but it went terrible. It didn't work. It just, everybody was doing their own thing. So I reached back out to the guys, all the original members of This Will Destroy You, to see if they wanted to do something different. And yeah, we ended up writing Young Mountain and kind of took off from there.
Young Mountain, self-released, right?
It was. Yeah, it was for the first year. We intended it to be like a demo for the most part, that we could, sell to fans, hand out to labels, hopefully get a deal. And luckily Magic Bullet, now Dark Operative, picked it up back in 2005-ish, and it officially came out in 2006.
Yes, very strong debut that I still listen to. When you started selling it and started playing shows, did you notice like a good reaction right away?
Yeah, it was a little surreal. Even the other day I was thinking about the first show we ever played, which was at a local kind of goth venue in San Antonio that a lot of bands would come through and play, not really touring acts, but a lot of local bands. And we had a decent amount of people at our first show. I think just that carryover from friends and people who knew of our pop punk band coming to check it out, and we got a really good reaction from that. I found that surprising. And then we were kind of almost, we played some shows here and there in Austin and San Antonio, but we were kind of put on tour shortly after that with Sparrow Swarm and Sing, another band on Magic Bullet at the time. And we toured, I think, just around the West Coast and Midwest, for the most part, just, DIY shows. But the reactions that we got were really good, and somehow that carried into us, getting some luck with booking agents and tours, and just kind of grew from there.
How was the scene or scenes you were playing at the time? I mean, was there other post-rock bands? Were people really receptive to that music? Because I know South Texas is a good spot for that. We've got Explosions. They're huge. They're doing their thing. We have Mogwai from Scotland. I didn't really discover that music until 2006. So I didn't really know what was going on before that. Like, how was it for you in those early days?
So I think we had an advantage back then because it really wasn't a big genre back then. I mean, you had Mogwai, Godspeed, Explosions, and I guess Sigur Rós, if you put them in that category. They're kind of the bands that were doing it at the time. I think we had more of a window and opportunity then to do something live. We're touring with bands that were nothing like us, so we were, offering people who had never been exposed to this kind of music, I guess, our best of what we thought it could be, and the reactions were good, and it was enough to get us to quit our jobs, most of us, and focus on it and really grind hard for a good 10 years.
How old are you when that band gets started?
I was 19 or 20. We started, February of 2004. So I was 19, about to turn 20.
So after Young Mountain comes out, you just quit whatever job you have and we're just touring as much as we can?
Yeah, I was a training manager over at Borders bookstore. And I used up my vacation time for the first tour we did. And after we started getting tour offers after that, I dropped it completely, and focused on the band, and hopped around a lot in living situations, trying to have this be my job. And it took a while before I was able to afford living somewhere on my own, or paying rent and all the bills and what come with it. It took a little bit, but we got there. We didn't. I think a lot of people think that we make a lot of money because of all the movies we've been a part of, and it's just the furthest thing from the truth. But I have been during the peaks of the band, probably after Moneyball and maybe the 4 or 5 years after that, we're in a comfortable enough position to where I could do things like choose to move to LA and live comfortably. But once the pandemic hit, that changed everything. But yeah.
How did your parents feel about that? Like when you're younger?
Yeah. No, so they constantly, especially my dad, the question always was, "What's your backup plan? What do you do when this isn't going to work. And they were always really pushing that because I was not in. I was not an academic. I hated school. I wanted to do nothing with it. So they knew I wasn't going to be excelling out of college or anything like that. But they still wanted me to have some sort of backup plan until around that time Moneyball came out. And then the question stopped. It's just like, okay, seems like this is working. And they've been so supportive. They've been supportive since I was a kid. But yeah, the questions about what do you do if it doesn't work out have definitely stopped.
Yeah. Well, you can have a backup plan, right? Because then it's not real. Didn't David Lee Roth say that? Like, you can have a backup plan.
Yeah. And we should, I don't have a great one, but I will figure it out if I need to.
So was that difficult for you in those early 20s, touring around the country, moving from house to house, not sure how things are going to work out? Was it difficult for you, or were you just happy with what you were doing?
I was really happy with it at the start. I was pretty carefree up until we did our first European tour back in 2008. And our driver for that tour had been in the business for like 10 years. And we were kids, we were young, we're in our early 20s, mid 20s, and we weren't taking it very seriously. And he kind of smacked some sense into me and kind of laid out, what the future could be if there was some sort of shift were to happen in the way that that we approached how seriously we were taking it. And after that,
what did he say to you?
well, pretty much that. I mean, our first European tour was pretty successful, and it was his first time he said that he had seen a band for their first tour come over from the States and it be successful. It was maybe a little more than a break even, but still, like, it just didn't happen a lot back then, and not a lot of bands from the States came over as much as they do now. So he was like, he just laid it out, like, he's been with these huge bands, he's driven for all these great people, and he's like, I see that you guys have an opportunity. And there's a few times where he was felt like quitting that tour because we were not taking it very seriously. But when he just kind of sat me down, it's like, this is what you could be doing. Like, you have an opportunity here. You should focus. You should take it. These are the things you need to do to change the way that y'all approach touring and for you to have a shot. And I just felt like that tour, like, something in my brain chemistry almost just completely changed. I went from like this super hyper ADHD off the walls kind of kid to like, I'm way more somber these days. I don't know. I just, not somber. That sounds the right word. I'm just a very even keeled person. And I think a lot of that was due to that conversation and having me focus so much more on the business aspect of what we were doing and how to make it successful, not just the artistic side, because there's so much that goes into the business side too. And I'm not saying that I didn't think that anybody else was in the band was capable of doing it or going to do it. I just felt like that responsibility suddenly lied on my shoulders to handle that aspect of it. So I just went into it as hard as I could. And after that, things did get a little more difficult when we were touring 6 to 8 months a year, 4 years in a row. There's one tour we did, world tour, 4 months, only days off for travel dates. It was very intense. So yeah, there's moments like that where it gets hard.
That shift you're talking about, I think I know what you're talking about, because when I look at earlier stuff I've done, like even this show, in the early days, I sound a lot happier and like goofier, and there's like a lot more jokes, and
Sure.
I just sound completely different. And when I hear myself nowadays, I'm like a lot more serious and just to the point. And I think with these endeavors, with your band, with whatever it is, like, part of you has to die, and it's like you almost have to not care as much, and you have to get beaten down somewhat. And it's not that you don't care and that you're not passionate about it, but just like something dies and something changes, and you're just like, you're just focused, you're just like moving forward. And it sounds like you went through that after that European tour.
Oh, absolutely. I know exactly what you're talking about. That change, that sacrifice, if you will, of like, it's so hard to describe unless you've experienced it. It's just you. I don't know if it's, I don't know, something about just like aging differently or learning differently or everything just becomes immediately, well, maybe not immediately, but pretty quickly different than what your whole life has felt up to that point. Um, and yeah, you do kind of have to let a part of yourself go there.
Yeah. I think maybe it's you give up everything else, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, no, that's a good way of putting it.
At some point, I gave up everything else, and 90% of my focus goes into the things I'm creating. Are you like that too?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't have any serious relationships. Friends, of course, but I don't get into like very serious monogamous relationships because I know that 90% of my attention is going to be on my job, my career, and I just never felt that it was fair to tell someone, hey, you're going to be second place to this in my life. And I date and what have you, but that is a part of life that I've sacrificed. And, I do get a certain sense of jealousy seeing people have that healthily, and be able to do what we do. Uh, or just people that also are outside of the industry and have it. There is a sense of like, oh, I could have had this kind of normal, quote unquote normal path, and maybe those dark moments wouldn't have been so dark if I had someone like that to share it with, or whatever and what have you. But I've also take a lot of I don't know. I have a sense of like I don't know. It's hard to put it. Just like this. I don't know. This like this sense of accomplishment and like a purpose that is worth everything that you sacrifice for it.
Yes, exactly. And I go through that too because, sometimes you feel alone, or sometimes you see other people with someone and you're like, oh, they look so happy. But imagine if you lived in this big house full of stuff and you had to like go to some kid's christening on a Sunday afternoon, like every week. Oh, no.
Yeah.
I'll be alone to not have to do that.
No, I feel you. That sounds like hell. But it sounds so foreign to me as well. Like when my older brother, he's married, has kids, and yeah, just all the things that come along with that, they sound so foreign to me, so out of like my realm of understanding. And part of me wants to be a part of it, but another part of me is like, dude, you have all the freedom in the world to do whatever you want, whenever you want. And yeah, so I take some solace in that for sure.
Right. The self-titled record, From This Will Destroy You. This is a classic. This is when I believe I discovered the band. Tell us about some of the making of this record. Now, I read that it was a difficult process. People are spread out. It took a long time to get everything together. Is that true?
Yeah. I mean, we weren't nearly as spread out as we were for later albums, but at the time we went from four guys that would rehearse or be in a space together 2-3 times a month to people living in San Marcos for school, or in Austin and San Antonio. It's not a huge spread, but yeah, we had a plan on when to get together, and we had to take time out of whatever was going on in everyone's lives to get in a place and to write and to bring stuff to the table. So it was different, and there was a certain pressure there since like Young Mountain was moderately successful at the time. We wanted to make sure we brought what we intended to bring with Young Mountain to the table. And yeah, I think we got really lucky.
Yeah, with a band like This Will Destroy You, it's got to be hard to write remotely, right? Because I think post-rock is a lot of feeling. Like how can you just put into a computer like, yeah, we're going to do this 10 times. Like, I feel like with post-rock, there's a swelling and a fanning out, and you have to feel it,
Yeah. No, that's something that made the most recent experience with writing the You Infinite album so unique, is that we wrote it in completely separate spaces. I was in California, Ray was in Austin, and we were just sending stuff back and forth to each other. And, there was some worry about when we recorded, would it have the same impact that we were feeling while we were writing on our own live? And me and Ray did get together a few times, and that definitely helped. But we were writing drums, which we'd never really written before. And just really kind of getting solidified in the demos, to the point to where, the album, we worked on it for over 3 years. We could have recorded it 2 years ago, but since we were sitting with it for so long and kept on adding to it and changing it, I was really worried that once we came together, had the group of guys together to record it, that it would not have the impact that it had when first writing it. But it came together great.
Yes, everyone listening, I can tell you it has the same impact. If you haven't heard the single Through Lines and Shine Eternal, you want to right now, and I'm definitely looking forward to hearing the rest of the self-titled record. Now, I've read in press releases and stuff that it's a modern successor to the self-titled This Will Destroy You release, which we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Talk about that. Is it because of the people involved, or are we invoking those feelings? Like, what is it?
Yeah, so Raymond, who I wrote the album with, he left the band shortly after self-titled was recorded or released, can't remember exactly, but he left to become a doctor. And he never stopped writing music, though, just throughout the years was writing riffs and little short excerpts of things. And he had sent me about 5 years ago, sent me just a folder of little ditties that he did, and I really thought that it would be a great This Will Destroy You album, but with all the weirdness of the separation of where This Will Destroy You is at now, we decided to put it out as under a different name about a year ago. But it was, in my sense, when we started writing, especially when we started taking it more seriously as an album, as something that we wanted to release under the umbrella of This Will Destroy You, really. Releasing under that umbrella, I wanted to we really wanted to have that effect and have that sense of the earlier This Will Destroy You stuff. And to me, it felt like a modern successor, mostly because Raymond had stopped writing with This Will Destroy You in 2008, and this is the first that we've written together since then, and it was almost picking up exactly where we left off. So in that way, I think not only tonally, but also in that sense of time, like it is very much, if me and Ray had written something after self-titled together, I think it would have sounded a lot like what You Infinite is.
That's exciting. And I got the feels from it, which is exactly what I want from post-rock music, and This Will Destroy You especially. So
thanks so much.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to hearing more. So here's a question. Is the plan to continue with You Infinite as a separate thing and do your version of This Will Destroy You with your lineup, to do both?
So I hope the You Infinite album does well enough to where we can do standalone tours and shows on it. I would absolutely love that. But for the time being, we'll just whenever my lineup is touring, we'll probably just throw 2 or 3 You Infinite songs into the set at some point of the This Will Destroy You set, and explain to the crowd what's going on in case people don't know, because a lot of people don't follow our day to day. But I do hope it carries over, and This Will Destroy You can always be what it is, and You Infinite can be something new and kind of the next chapter.
Yeah. Well, I do follow your day to day, and here's the $1 million question: what is going on with the 2 lineups?
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah. We've decided that it's what exactly happened and why it's going on is too personal to just throw out there. But just sticking to the facts, me and Chris don't want to work together anymore. And we couldn't come to an agreement where either of us got what we wanted out of the band. We both had equal ownership rights to the name. So, I fully intended on continuing making this kind of music and performing as This Will Destroy You. And to be honest, me and Chris don't talk, so most of communication's done through lawyers. So I find out about shows and tours going on when I find out about it, typically when they pop up online, or when, best case scenario, hopefully our booking agents are in touch with each other, so we don't have overlap or running into each other. But it's a weird situation, and I know people would like to know what happened. But we just reached points where we were done with each other. Yeah.
So what happens? Does personal communication just cease at one point, and then you start hearing from a lawyer only?
That's kind of how it started for the most part. I mean, there's been people in the middleman position, and I do not envy them. I started booking shows, and it wasn't taking great on the other side, and I heard from a lawyer then, and just kind of had it back and forth from then. And and I think unless I get into the position where I could have some sort of buyout option, this is what it's going to look like for the foreseeable future. And it's not ideal, and it's confusing, but it's also my livelihood. I went from 2020 to 2023, 3 years without touring income, and it was some of the hardest, most stressful times, especially towards the latter part of it, where it's just like all of my savings is gone. The government bailout was over. I wanted to reach an agreement to where we would both be happy, but it just didn't get to that point. So luckily we've gotten to the point where I am able to go out and do shows, and hopefully bring that same performance that I like to have for those shows to the people that are there. But it's weird. It's definitely weird, and I wish it wasn't the way it is, but it's exactly the way it is, and there's nothing that will change that.
Yeah, as an outsider and longtime fan of the band, I just want you guys to be together playing in the ideal situation, right? Because we one band, one lineup, they're playing together. So that's one thing. But I get where you're coming from. I mean, if you've invested so much of your life into this thing and you have equal ownership in it and you're not making money, and This Will Destroy You has done a lot of great things, soundtracks, Super Bowl commercials, there's money at stake. I get it. Like, you don't want to just walk away from it and say like, oh, okay, you win.
Yeah. No, I don't. Neither of us could get to that point. And I mean, it very much feels like a divorce in a lot of sense. I have a lot of friends and family that are going through that. And there's just so many parallels. And, This Will Destroy You really is kind of our child. I'm sure each of us will say we deserve custody more than the other. But yeah, we had to come to a common ground, because just going at it with lawyers and the back and forth can be insanely distressful.
Yeah. Is there rules like your lineup can only play these records and his lineup can only play these records?
No, we kind of had we agreed that maybe the best thing to do, if we were going to have two different versions out there, is to play records when we do play live, just to kind of have something special for the fans, since it really does look like that This Will Destroy You won't be releasing any more music under that name. If we're going to be playing shows, they should have a theme to it, a reason while we're going out there. So that's just something we kind of mutually agreed on. And yeah, we'll see where it goes.
Okay. How about personal rules? Like, what if someone from your lineup ends up going to play with Chris's lineup? Like, is he out? Is that it?
No, not at all. I don't try and stop anybody from doing business with them. Our fallout is our fallout, and I don't expect people to take sides or work with them or not work with them. But yeah, I'm very happy with the group of guys that kind of stumbled upon during that time through a mutual friend, and yeah, I loved what they brought to the You Infinite album as well, and look forward to performing with them. But I would be very, 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 very surprised if any of them had even the mildest interest in performing with Chris. But yeah.
Is it personal, business, artistic, or all three?
Mostly personal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to leave it right there.
Great.
The self-titled record. Now, this got a lot of attention over the years. We have the Mighty Rio Grande, which was used everywhere for a while. And I know it was in that movie Room. And was that the same song in the Super Bowl commercial?
I believe so. We did that Verizon commercial, and I'm 99% sure it was Mighty Rio Grande. If I don't remember what song was used in a licensing instance, especially a big one, it's most likely the Rio Grande, because it was just constantly being used, which was great. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the one that people go for.
That's got to feel great, right? To write something like that so many people respond to, that so many people want to use in things.
Oh, absolutely. It was the last song that I would think I would have ever expected would go there. I don't think I connected to that song the way that other people did until it started being used for their creative purposes. Seeing it in Moneyball, seeing that scene in Room, like just the emotional connection that it brought to what you're seeing visually was amazing to experience and to be a part of. Very proud of it, for sure.
How that album came out in 2008, I think. How many years before things really started catching on and everyone wanted to start using it?
It's about 3 years, 2-3 years. We probably got word in 2010 or somewhere late 2010 that Moneyball was happening, and we'd had some film licensing before then and TV licensing, but that really broke the mold. And when they used it in the Oscars over the whole best film montage at the end of the broadcast, that really launched us into areas where we were turning down money because we didn't want to be a part of certain companies and what have you. But to have that freedom and choice and to be getting offers, like that, it was wild, absolutely wild.
Yeah, especially because of your interest in film scores and all of that, right? I mean, you're living it now.
Yeah, no, definitely try to ride that into as a way to get into that industry. But when things started working out, those personal and some business reasons that me and Chris clashed on definitely got in the way.
It's a shame, right?
It is a damn shame.
All right, here's a hypothetical. Let's say somehow Chris comes to you and says, like, let's work this out. Let's work through all of this and play as one unit again. Would you do that?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, I understand. I have situations like that in my own life too. So yeah, with certain people, it's just doesn't matter what you say or do. Nope. Never.
Yeah.
Ever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, all right. After self-titled comes Tunnel Blanket. Now, I'll never forget this night for the rest of my life. My friends and I were big, still are, but back then too, big This Will Destroy You fans. We knew Young Mountain. We knew the 2008 record. And around that time, starting in 2008, I would see you like every year in Philadelphia. That's where I lived at the time. I would see you like every year on tour. So you must have been touring a lot, because every year I would see you. And then in Brooklyn, when I moved there in 2012, every year I would see you. You would always be here. So it was 2010, maybe leading up to Tunnel Blanket. And we knew you as Young Mountain 2008 self-titled This Will Destroy You. And you played at Kung Fu Necktie. I was there with two friends and we were high on various substances. And I think you opened with Black Dunes and our jaws were on the floor. It was one of the craziest things I've ever seen and one of the most awesome things I've ever seen. Like, how did we decide to go in that direction?
Yeah. So I think after Young Mountain and self-titled, Chris and I definitely wanted to do something a little different. And we had recently at that point had a different bass player come into play because Ray left, and another drummer come into play as well. And we tried writing together a few times, but what we're bringing to the table, it wasn't really exciting anyone. And Communal Blood came about because I was tripping mushrooms with Chris and Sam Marcus, and we were just making weird music, but that guitar tone kind of was born. My guitar tone for that album kind of came from that session, that one, just hero dose of mushrooms, writing music. I really enjoyed that sound for my guitar. So we had like a little excerpt, it might even be on one of the Rarities albums, of Communal Blood. And I started to play that in the rehearsal space, and it became the song. And from there, it was just like, and this is mostly how it works with all of the This Will Destroy You albums, is like we have one track that is like cemented, and you can kind of build out from that. And once that sound was there, it just all kind of started happening quickly with the rest of the band members that were just writing in this way. And we all enjoyed heavy music at the time. And there's even, there's a lot, we were listening to a lot of Screw at the time as well. So there's a lot of that influence in there as and yeah, it just came together, and it was a really unique experience for us writing it, and we really wanted it to be a really unique experience for those who were listening to it. And I love hearing people's like first time they enjoyed Tunnel Blanket stories. I've heard the craziest ones, and typically have to do with drugs because it is a very drugged out album. But yeah, I don't know. It was a dark time for a lot of us too. We're dealing with a lot of sudden loss, which was terrible. And it was kind of our homage and middle finger to death. So yeah, all in all, it just was something that I think as well for me and Chris at the time, especially, that kind of got this weirdness, experimentalization that we wanted to do out of our system so that an album like Another Language could happen.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I'm always chasing the high of that first time again. Maybe I just need to get high again and experience it again, because I'm like,
Yeah,
oh,
maybe.
no, that time was different, or the other time was heavier. Oh, so it's just chasing that high, but you can't, we're here now. When writing in a band like This Will Destroy You, how do you solidify it? Are you recording while you're writing? Because I imagine a lot of that stuff happens kind of spontaneously, and then you have to recreate those sounds, right?
Yeah, so it varies from album to album, song to song, but typically, for at least the songs that I am bringing to the table, I will have, for the most part, like the structure of the song built out entirely, hopefully by the time I bring it in to show anybody else. But sometimes it is just sitting in a room and waiting for something to happen. It's not the way that I like to write, but that's kind of something that I wanted to get used to as well, because that's kind of the situation you're put in when you are scoring things. You at least have some sort of visual element, and sometimes a sample track of something that they like. But typically, I prefer at least to have an idea to bring in to be worked on. But those songs that come up organically and happen like all in that one spot, they can be great. They can also be complete trash.
With the sound change, did you ever catch a lot of flack? Now, I will say, from my perspective, This Will Destroy You is probably the best at innovating your sound, but still retaining the core of the band and just doing it well. But like, I mean, did you ever feel at any point in the band that just like, oh no, people don't seem to like this?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit with Tunnel Blanket. Yeah, we knew though when we were putting it out that that it wasn't going to be for everyone. But yeah, I did have it in mind when we did Another Language that I wasn't going to play guitar like I did on Tunnel Blanket forever. I was like, I want to get back to my more melodic, like, up in front style instead of drowning and reverb and delay. And everybody for that album especially just brought themselves to the table, which was really cool. And that's the only album that we wrote in the studio. But yeah, I definitely felt that with Tunnel Blanket.
So you wrote Another Language in the studio?
Yes, yeah.
How long was that process?
So once we got rolling, our drummer at the time was the assistant producer to John Congleton, who we recorded most of our albums with. And we had access to his studio in Dallas whenever it wasn't being used. So after we started getting rolling, after we'd written War Prayer, all the other songs kind of started to fall into motion. That was probably maybe 2 weeks in the studio. The unfortunate thing was the hard drive that all of everything that we had recorded in the demoing process before we brought it to John to do the recording of it. The hard drive and the backup hard drive broke on the same day. Had a mic stand fall in one of them, and the other one just crapped out, if I remember correctly. So we had to recreate everything we did in the studio again when John was there.
Wow.
Yeah, it was terrifying.
Oh, no. Wait, so you mean to tell me 2 weeks in the studio recording Another Language?
So the writing of it inside the studio, it was probably about 2 weeks worth of writing. The actual recording of it, since it was all present in our minds and, we'd been listening to the demos a lot at that point, it was probably 3 or 4 days. We record pretty quick.
Wow. I'm shocked. Well, I guess I shouldn't be shocked. You guys just must have been really locked in, because I would say that's my favorite This Will Destroy You record.
Thank you. It's mine too. I agree. Yeah. I think we had so much touring experience at that point too, that I think we're all very comfortable in our positions and what we all felt that we brought to the table. And everybody just had like the confidence and the know-how to just go for whatever they wanted to do. And we just got lucky that it all melded together so well. I really, really do appreciate that album's collaborative beginnings that it had. It was very, very cool to have all these talented people just giving their all into what is, in my opinion, as well, our best album.
Oh yeah, the best. And again, This Will Destroy You is just good at innovating, but bringing it back to the core. Like Tunnel Blanket is out there, right? We're really going for it with the heavier sound, but then you bring it back in for Another Language, and then it's just more of you for New Others Part 1 and 2. And that was awesome when we didn't know it was going to be 2 albums, but then all of a sudden you're just like, here's another one.
Yeah.
It was like, yes, all right.
Yeah, no, we were stoked to do that, to just have the surprise drop of the Part 2. Yeah, that was a different writing experience as well. We were stuffed inside this tiny, tiny room. You couldn't walk without stepping on somebody's pedals or drums or something. It was so small in California, and kind of put ourselves on a deadline and rushed that one out. There was things that I would definitely do different on those albums, but I think given the circumstances and the time that we did it, I'm happy with it.
When did like the division and the 2 lineups start to happen? I think I remember reading a post about that last year. And I saw the band there was a Tunnel Blanket show in New York City where George Clark did vocals. Was that you, or was that the other lineup?
Yeah, that was Chris. Chris
Okay,
did the
so the
Tunnel
two
Blanket
lineup thing was
shows.
already happening then?
Yeah. Yeah. We separated in 2020 and it became way more official probably in like 2022, 2023. Yeah.
So since 2020, you haven't played together?
No. No, outside of like a run of shows we did. No, what's that? No, that had to have been 2019. We were in complete lockdown by the start of 2020, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So no.
March 2020 was when that started. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe January 2020. We had some shows and it was either January 2020 or 2019. But I'm pretty sure it must have been 2020. We wouldn't have gone a whole year without playing shows.
Yeah. I remember that. It was, I can't remember the venue, but I was here at the Brooklyn show.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So you Infinite. Okay. So we reconnected with Raymond. We wrote the record. We did it remotely. Is it just you and Raymond working on this? Did you bring in other people to do other stuff?
For the most part, like the demoing of the entire album before I went into the studio was just me and Ray. And then the guys that I'd been performing with live for This Will Destroy You, I asked them, they had all the demos and I kind of pointed out specific sections of different songs. So I was like, oh, this could use something here, some more texture, what have you. And then the drummer, our drummer Johnny, just kind of gave him free reign to change whatever he wanted to by the time we went into the studio, and we would let him know if it was working for us or not. But he did a lot. He did the drums on the album. He did most, like 90% of the piano and Rhodes stuff, all the extra percussion as well. He was working on all the vibraphones stuff that was recorded. He was doing a lot. And then Ethan and Nick, my other guys, they brought in some textural stuff that worked really well as well.
Where did you record it?
We recorded it in Austin at, I can't remember the name of the studio. We recorded it at two different studios in Austin. The one that's, I can't remember for whatever reason, and a studio called Estuary in Austin is where we kind of did all the mixing and tightened a few things up.
So to have a song in a Super Bowl commercial, that's got to pay good, right? I'm thinking 5 figures.
You would think. Yeah, I think so. I probably saw from that commercial personally after the label split and everybody else gets their cut. I probably saw somewhere around $8,000, which is good money. Don't get me wrong. But it wasn't nearly as much as I thought it was going to be. When I heard that we got an offer for a Super Bowl commercial, I was like, oh, this has to be a 6-figure offer, low 6 figures, I was guessing. And, the band takes 50% of whatever the offer is, and then that's split up, 4 ways, however it is. But all in all, it wound up, I think it was like $60K.
A lot of ways to split that up, though.
Yeah, no, definitely. That was as much as we got paid for the entirety of Moneyball, and there was like 5 trailers, and it was used 6 times in the movies and countless other times in reference. So it's never as much as you think it's going to be, especially if you haven't done a lot of licensing before. I thought people that I've heard in films and TV, I was like, oh, they got to be making bank, or the residuals have to be amazing, and the residuals are great to have. Don't get me wrong; it's awesome to have income that comes to you, but it's not a lot at all.
Not enough to live off of.
Not at all. No.
I remember during that time seeing Brent from Dark Operative on Twitter, like giving people a hard time because remember there would be these imitators who would do like their own version of the Rio Grande song, and you would see those pop up somewhere. Do we not like that? Do we hate that? Do we sue them?
I personally don't mind it. I'm kind of flattered by it, unless when it's being used to like support a product or something like that. That's when I would have an issue. And we have sent out a lot of cease and desist, and we have sued over people using our material or trying to cover it without payment or using it in situations where we're not want our music in, like politics or religion. Speaking of politics, we actually got an offer, I think it was back in 2020, to have Mighty Rio Grande be the theme song for the Republican Party, which we wildly turned down. But yeah, so I mean, things like that. We sued a church. I think all I'm allowed to say is, sued a church and came to a settlement. But like people that are using it for their home movies or attaching it to whatever their vacation videos, what have you, I love seeing that and seeing people covering it just for the fun and performing it. I'm all about that. But yeah, just don't use it for any sort of gain financially, especially corporate or religious or political. And yeah, you're gonna get some cease and desist for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rightfully so. So we have the self-titled debut from You Infinite coming out February 28th on Pelagic Records, a fantastic label. And it sounds like there is the possibility of live shows for this band, yes?
Yeah. So the first one will be post-festival. We're doing a This Will Destroy You set and a You Infinite set. And there's talks with some other festivals about having both bands play. And yeah, just depending on the reception of the album. And it seems like the new measure of what bands get paid on tour and what have you, or record deals, is now Spotify followers. So if we have a decent amount of Spotify followers, I would definitely take the act out on the road as a standalone.
And This Will Destroy You, the two lineups will continue. Will the two lineups continue to write and release music, or are we just going to play the existing discography? Do you know what's going on there?
It'll just be existing discography. Yeah. No new music under This Will Destroy You until one of us buys each other out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that'll happen at some point?
If I have the money for it, I will do it the first chance I get. Yeah.
Do you think that offer would be accepted if you did have the money for it?
No. Maybe. I don't know. Chris doesn't play nearly as many shows and tour nearly as much as I do. He's not a big fan of it. I don't know. Maybe something would be better than nothing at all at that point for him. But I don't know. It would have to be pretty significant, I would think.
Well, I wish you all the best. And Jeremy, thank you so much for coming on the show. I've been listening to your music for a very long time now. It's been ingrained in my life. I'm looking forward to the new album from You Infinite, and thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. Appreciated the conversation.
And there you have it. Jeremy Galindo. An amazing conversation from one of my favorite musicians from one of my all-time favorite post-rock bands. I've been a fan of This Will Destroy You since around 2008 or 9 when I saw them for the first time. They were touring on the self-titled record, which is beloved by myself and many now. And I would just see them every single time I could, every time they came through. Always a very impressive live band. Their music is just ingrained in different parts of my life. I have fond memories of heading to band practice in 2015, I think it was. I was in a band and I would always be playing another language, listening to that over and over. It's just a fantastic album, and that conversation with Jeremy was really enlightening. It was really great doing a deep dive on the records, and that whole talk track he had about that moment on tour after he spoke to the manager, and he was just lighter and goofier and ADHD, and suddenly after that tour and that conversation, he just really started taking everything more seriously and kind of became the de facto manager of the band. That stuck with me. I noticed that's a talk track that I've had in other interviews since I spoke to Jeremy, and that's something I think about a lot with my own creative endeavors. That moment where things change and you grow and you start taking things more seriously. So that was really interesting. The split that happened within the band starting in 2020, I'm glad we found out more about that. I understand what's going on with the dual lineups now, and I hope that all the members of the band find some resolution. I mean, there is some resolution now, but I hope things continue to work out for everybody. And You Infinite, if you have not heard the self-titled debut from You Infinite, out now on Pelagic Records, definitely check it out. If you're a fan of This Will Destroy You, if you're a fan of post-rock, you'll love it. I love it. I'm looking forward to more from You Infinite, and I hope that someday, somehow, we get more from This Will Destroy You. But if not, we always have their flawless discography to fall back on. So thank you so much, Jeremy, for coming on the show. So let's check in. How are we doing? I am doing okay. I was sick for a week and a half. That was not fun, but it seems to be a regular occurrence. Every 3 months or 2 months or 4 months or whatever it is, I get hit with a sinus thing or a cold, which it was in this case. But as the cold was happening, I did go to the doctor and get an updated physical and blood test and everything else, and it looks like everything's okay. So that's good. I hope everybody out there is doing really well. As for things going on, my band Memory Entry have officially released our debut EP, Our World is Going to Disappear. It's out there now. There's a music video out there now for the second song from the EP called Nothing Dead Will Go. That video is up on the Iodine YouTube channel. So check out the EP if you're interested. It's heavier, it's noisier, it's hardcore, it's post-hardcore, it's screamo. So if that's your thing, check it out. There's still some vinyl available via the Iodine Recordings web store and the Mind Over Matter Records web store, so pick one up. Besides that, I'm just trying to find time to get everything done that I need to get done, and it seems to be getting harder and harder these days. I'm sleep deprived, my day job is busier, the podcast feels busier than ever, and life is just busy in general. But it's good. I feel good, and I'm looking forward to playing more shows soon. By the way, if you're in New York City, come to the Memory Entry EP release show with Husbandry and Bearchild. That's Friday, March 28th. At the Windjammer in Ridgewood, Queens, New York City. Okay, so a few weeks ago, Frail, the legendary Frail, featuring Don DeVore, played a reunion gig at the First Unitarian Church in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I went. That was my first time at the church since, I think, 2011, when I went to a rival school's show there. And that was before the Quicksand reunion, and they covered Shovel, which was unbelievably awesome. So my first time in Philly in a little while, my first time at the church in over a decade, and it was pretty mind-blowing to be there. The First Unitarian Church is just a legendary venue. I remember the first show I saw there. It was winter of 1999. Piebald, Saves the Day, Newfound Glory. Remember that tour? Were you around for that? Sold out show at the church. Amazing stuff. But the Frail gig was with Windsor for the Derby and Pyre. They were the two openers. They were great. And Frail just put on a hell of a show. Really was a nice throwback to the early to mid-90s emo, screamo. Frail did an updated version of their spoken word track. The energy was high. Everybody was into it. People were singing along. People were moshing. It was excellent. And best of all, they covered an Ink and Dagger song. They did cover Full Circle. And being at that show, being in Philadelphia, watching Frail cover Ink and Dagger, watching Don DeVore play guitar at the First Unitarian Church again, covering an Ink and Dagger song with Frail. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. It was a great night. I saw a bunch of people I haven't seen in a long time. I got to hang out with some friends before and after the show. Really glad I went. Always nice to be back in my home city. And I got to talk to Don DeVore too, which was great for me because he's one of my favorite guitar players of all time. And we had him on the show recently. By the way, we've gotten a ton of great accolades for that episode with Don DeVore, including this email from Jordan Salazar, who says, "Hi, Keith. My name is Jordan Salazar, and I'm a newer listener of the New Scene. I think I first was aware of your show from the Ian Shelton Military Gun episode. I'm a huge fan of the band, and somehow forgot about your podcast and came back to it when you did the Don DeVore episode, which was an incredible episode and probably one of my all-time favorite podcast interviews. As I've been listening to a lot of you since Don's episode went live, I'm realizing often you're asking questions that I think to myself, what a damn good question. And I don't usually think that when I'm listening to interviews. I don't have specific examples at the moment, but I chalk it up to that you're asking questions others don't. A lot of times it's just questions about their work away from music or a personal question. And I don't know, I think that's really great. Sometimes it's a question like, well, why did the band end? Or how did the band get started up again? Just little things of interest that I notice a lot of interviewers don't ask. Thank you, Jordan, for the kind words. And thank you for your support of the show. And thank you, everybody who messaged me about Ink and Dagger and Don and that episode and shared different stories and everything else. I know I say I have a lot of favorite bands, but Ink and Dagger is definitely up there for sure. For sure. Look, I've got the tattoo. See that? So that is it for this week. We are going to end the show with one of my absolute favorite This Will Destroy You songs called Threads. It's from their self-titled 2007 LP. I'll add it to the New Scene 2025 Spotify playlist. You can find all of our guests there. You can find all of my recommendations there. Find that playlist, follow it, share it, listen to it. I'm back next week, and I'll see you then.